So my name is Adrien Segal. I live in Oakland, California, and I'm gonna start with this image because I visited this site a long time ago when I was getting my undergraduate degree, and it's just off the coast of San Francisco, very close to the Golden Gate Bridge. And a lot of my work starts with a really personal, kind of intimate experience in the landscape. And visiting this site really inspired me to start looking more at the tides. This is the site of a former bathhouse where they harness the tides for recreation, and now it's ruins that are slowly being taken back by the ocean. So in my undergraduate degree, I had a degree in furniture design, but I started working with data way back then. And this is a visualization of what data tracking the tides looks like. I found an open source resource for tide data, this historic tide database which is tracked by a government agency. So this is the water level taken every 6 minutes for a full 24-hour period. And you can also then map that into a simple chart. So for every place in the world, the tides look a little bit different. In San Francisco, we have 2 highs and 2 lows per day. And then learning more about the tides, they're influenced by the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon in relation to the Earth. So the cycle repeats monthly, around every 29 to 30 days. And I was learning how to build things. I'm a fabricator in my background. I work in a wood shop primarily. And in this case, I took a full cycle of daily tide charts and hand bent them in steel, and then was organizing ways to represent this data as a physical object. So in this case, the finished piece looks like this. There's 2 variables of time. So from the front view, you can see the daily tide chart. And then I'm thinking a lot, not just about the data, but also about the object in space, how light interacts with the piece, what shadows will be cast. In this case, there's a walnut frame that I fabricated, and then that holds up all of these metal bars that show the tide charts. From the side view, it's also the dimension of time, but the full month. And then here's an installation view of that work along with some other data works by other people at a show a while back called Data Deluge in Texas. So that was the beginning of my data, kind of diving into data from a kind of an adjacent different field in furniture design. But I am very much interested in some of the same things now. So jumping forward, this piece was installed this last year in 2022 in Alameda, California. And it's revisiting tides, but from a very different perspective, and also in a large permanently installed public artwork. So I was still working with these undulations and flows in nature, but with less of a direct literal translation of tide data, and still working in the realm of the body and inviting interaction in physical space with physical materials. This is an image of the fabrication of this piece. It was made from cast concrete by a specialized company not far from where the site is. And here's the finished sculpture. So just to cover data physicalization, because it's sort of a strange term, also known as data sculpture. It is a physical artifact whose geometry or material properties are encoded with data. So many of you are probably familiar with the variables for visual encoding: shape, size, value, texture, color, orientation, and 2D position. And for sculpture, we now can layer in material and form, which are really the heart of sculpture and my interest in creating art. So material knowledge is of the utmost fascination to me. I love working with material. I love working with my body, and really thinking about how material objects and artifacts carry meaning across time and across generations. I just want to point out 2 books that came out last year as well, both about physical data, making with data with Routledge, and making data, materializing digital information through Bloomsbury. So both of those feature some of my work and a bunch of other works along these lines. I'm not the first person who came up with this. Looking back throughout history, other cultures have worked with physical representations of data, the Incan Quipu, which was a knot tying, color encoded system, and then the Mesopotamian clay tokens, which were used for counting commodities. And then if you're interested in learning more about other physicalizations of data, I'm going to direct you to dataviz.org. It's a really wonderful online archive. And also just nature has this really wonderful, beautiful way through things like tree rings and ice cores and of tracking information about the climate and changes in the landscape in natural forms. So I'm immensely inspired by natural forms, environmental forces, temporal changes, perceptual experience, and then this idea of how we take data into information and then knowledge to wisdom. So thinking of knowledge as a more expansive way of knowing that include the body, the mind, also emotion and spirit. So something like this photo on the left, learning that the Colorado River, which is the largest river in the Western United States, doesn't hit the ocean anymore because we use all the water before it gets there, leads me to do research into what information we have about what water is used for. So the graph on the right is showing what all water in the United States is used for between the years 1950 and 2000. And that yellow section shows that almost half of our water goes to power generation. So my process of physical building involves cutting a lot of wiggly shapes, sometimes with a bandsaw, sometimes with a CNC, stacking them up into a lamination and then carving them all back with a lot of abrasive tools, and then resolving and refining the shape into a really finished, smooth surface that invites touch. Sculpture is an aesthetic language I use to bridge the gap between reason and emotion. That's kind of the heart of my artist statement. So when I see a data set, I understand why it's important to track nature that way, but I also am sad that it loses all of the beauty and emotional connection I have to the feeling of being like deeply in snow. So I will source as much information as I can, in this case from a site in the Sierra Nevadas of California, showing a full year of snowfall information. So I accumulated 31 years of this data. You can see there's quite a variable amount of water in the snowpack from year to year. And I'll play around with how to organize this in space to really look at the long-term changes and trends, and then go through this painstaking process of fabrication where every piece is a different size based on the data, carving back. And in this case, it's a fairly overtly functional piece where I made a cabinet of drawers, drawing a parallel between how we store things in our homes and in drawers and cabinets, but then how nature has a really beautiful way of storing water in snowpack, and then it's released seasonally. I will often partner directly with scientific organizations. So in this case, I was provided these LiDAR maps showing the path of a river in Oregon by the USGS Water Oregon Science Center. And then once I have an idea of what the data is doing, I can quickly mock it up in a clay form, which is what you're seeing on the left. And then I go back through and painstakingly apply as accurately to the data shapes that I can cut out and carve back. So here's the CNC router cutting those forms and stack laminating them, and then me carving them back with a die grinder. And then here's the finished piece showing 15 years of the movements of this particular river in Oregon. So when we think of art, we tend to think of art objects, and this is a mistake. So I've been very influenced by this book, Art as Experience by John Dewey, and he really believed that art is this connection between the doing or the making and the experience of the person creating that work, and then what he called undergoing or perceiving, and the experience of people who are seeing the work. And art is what connects those two experiences across time. So we need to stop thinking about artworks as objects and start thinking about them as triggers for experience. I borrowed this graphic from Valentina, who presented with on data and design in the previous iteration. So what I really love about this graphic is that it really shows that data is this quote unquote objective, collection of information about the world. But then to transcend that into knowledge and wisdom, it must have a subjective viewer. And so this idea that objectivity and subjectivity are separate doesn't really work. I think it goes back to the Enlightenment, when we had Descartes, who believed that to obtain the best results, emotions must be kept out. So rational processing must be unencumbered by the passions, or otherwise known as emotions. And I think that doesn't work so well when you want to experience the world fully and respond emotionally to what's happening around us. Western science has stressed this attitude of objectivity, in which it appears that natural phenomena, including the human organism, are nothing but mechanisms. But as I just said, subject and object cannot be separated, and we and our surroundings are the process of a unified field. So here we're looking at a wildfire map that shows how the Rim Fire, which happened in 2013 up near Yosemite National Park, grew and expanded over time. And then the reality of what a wildfire looks like from the ground. And I want to marry these two things back together and then ask some bigger questions about why this is happening in the world. And if you've ever been in a place that's being affected by wildfire, it is a profound experience to not be able to go outside because the air is so terrible. So when these events happen, they are massive forces. And you start to actually, the scent of wildfire starts to affect you, sort of have trauma over time. So I've gone out and I've collected wildfire wood, charcoal, and made ink from that, and done a series of drawings based on some of these progression maps where I hand ink a very complex form and then shade them using the charcoal. And then I've also got a series of sculptures that are part of this wildfire series. And the role of the artist is really to ask questions, not to answer them. So I'm not telling people how they should be living or what decisions we need to make, but I want to know how this happens and why. And is this really a natural disaster as it's often talked about in the media? And if you start to look at the data, only 1% of wildfires are caused by natural factors. Most of the rest of them are human interactions. Arson is a huge one. And then we're building homes right next to the forest that traditionally needs to burn. So burning is really healthy for a forest ecosystem, but it's very damaging when we build a house there and it's destroyed. So some of the three-dimensional sculptures I've made in this series actually started in, I think, 2013 was when I first started working with wildfire data. And at the time, this had been the largest wildfire in California. It has since been surpassed probably 8 times, but the Cedar Fire was in San Diego County. And you can see I've extrapolated the area, and then time becomes the height of the sculpture. So I'm showing where the fire is burning at various points in time. It's much too complicated to explain the process of getting to a bronze sculpture from this really complex data, but just to give an overview, there's plaster involved and then a wax that gets burned away, and then bronze gets poured into a form. And then here's an image showing the patina being applied to this bronze sculpture. This one's of the campfire which was the fire that destroyed the town of Paradise in 2018. So the two kinds of knowledge I really want to be unified in my own practice are the practice and theory, the techne, the episteme, doing and thinking, making and knowing. I'm equally interested in the technical sides of what I'm building and working in a workshop and figuring out how to work with materials as much as I am in the ideas that I'm representing. I created this piece in response to the incredibly complex water rights system in California. This is a commission for an office building in downtown San Francisco. I found a database that has all the permitted water users in California. I filtered it and cleaned it for the largest 1,072 users. And the length of each strand equates to the amount of water, and the color equates to the entity. Such as the government, a corporation, or an individual. Unfortunately, we don't track what that water is being used for. And here's a kind of attempt to show it in the space. I did a few residencies in Alaska and started working with glacier and sea ice data, and particularly this idea of albedo, which is the reflectivity of a surface. And it's a really important factor in studying feedback loops in ocean warming and the loss of sea ice that's happening in the Arctic. So I, after the residency in Alaska, was able to do a residency at a glass casting facility. I started working with these sea ice coverage photographs of the Arctic landscape, digitized them into a three-dimensional surface, which I could use to make a positive form, and then use that to make a negative mold to cast glass into. And so I have a series of these sea ice inspired photographic imagery pieces that are currently on view at a show called Climate Awakenings in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at Contemporary Craft. That's up through January. And I've got a lot of the other works that I've just talked about on view at another show called Material Mapping, Data-Driven Sculpture by Adrien Segal and Norwood Viviana, which is at the Fuller Craft Museum. If you don't know Norwood Viviana's work, definitely check it out. He's a fantastic person also working in physicalization of data. The last piece I'm going to talk about, I completed, still in progress. So I started last year as a Fulbright scholar in the UK at the University of Dundee, Scotland, and learning about these extratropical storms that happen there that have gotten very powerful, and in partnering with some research scientists who told me a lot of information about how these forms, these cyclone kind of forms start. So this piece is called Cyclogenesis. And here I am in their ceramic studio at the University of Dundee, kind of iterating a clay version of what that cyclogenesis formation looks like, which is really damaging to the landscape in the sense that whole forests have been blown down by the intensity of these storms. So you can see the timber, the massive power that is happening to see wood break like that is just incredible. And I was working with the University of Dundee Botanical Garden, partnered with the curator there to create this earth sculpture based on the cyclogenesis form. They had an area of the garden was a bunch of downed trees from one of the storms. So we chopped up those eucalyptus and actually embedded them inside the sculpture to build up the form. And then the next stage will be to plant this. And so we're choosing plants and figuring out when I can go back and start doing the next stage of the project. Along with the earthwork, I did an installation of a bunch of different objects in different materials I had been creating while I was at the University of Dundee. So here are a few shots, including the model I made of the earthwork, and then some wicker pieces, some wood that I've carved from the botanical garden source, and then a bunch of other little fun experiments. I also teach, which I love, mentoring other people in how to build things. I haven't quite figured out how to marry the building with the data visualization in a teaching context yet, but I'm very interested in going that direction. And this is a group of students I had who are doing a sculptural lighting workshop in Colorado just this past summer. And then this is the piece that's currently on my bench in the woodshop I work in. It's an iteration of the Monterey Bay Canyon, and that's what I'll be going to work on hopefully later today. So thank you.